Welcome back to On the Tee on this July 13th, 2011, the open edition of On the Tee on the Iowa Sports Connection radio and television network. We're on our flagship ESPN 1700 The Champ, two pros and a hack, and that's Judd Gibb across from me, Jay Horton. I'm Mike Rickard, head of the Hack Nation in our Okoboji Grill studios, and also brought to you by Stony Creek Inn. I know, Judd, you had a wonderful weekend down there at the John Deere Classic, nestled in at the Stony Creek, and now we're fortunate, another gentleman that was down there, and next year we'll have to direct him to the Stony Creek. He's Adam Schupak. He's a award-winning writer from Golf Week magazine. He's kind enough to join us tonight and talk about the great Dean Beman and this book that they've collaborated on. Dean Beman, golf's driving force, and I know you're a busy man out there in the Big Apple. Thanks for taking time to join us this evening, Adam.
Sure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about how this. How did you and Dean decide that this is a project that you wanted to dive into? Of course, your background is well chronicled as a great writer. Graduated from college, from Colgate University. In fact, we got out a thesaurus so we could have this conversation with you tonight. We do that when we bring brilliant people into the conversation. But how did you guys decide to collaborate on this, you and Dean?
Yeah, it's a neat story. I was working at the World Golf Hall of Fame when he was inducted in 2000. I was working on writing a profile about him. I certainly knew about him, and he's a guy who, with all his accomplishments, they kind of tend to blur together like the individual successes of a straight-A student. This is the guy who created the TPC network. You got your one right there, the TPC Deer Run, where they played this past week. But he created the Senior Tour, the Nationwide, the whole idea of the game of golf really becoming the game of corporate America. All this happened under his watch from 1974 to 94. And as I'm working on this, I'm thinking, where's the book on this guy? And there wasn't one. So that was really my initial idea. And about 5 years later, 2005, I pitched this whole concept to him, and he turned me down flat. He just wasn't interested. He kind of felt the window to do a book on his accomplishments and his career had passed, and so I kind of put it on the back burner. Was working at Golf Week, and I'd interview him from time to time. He was always gave me the most thoughtful answers, and I knew that there was a good story to be told, and but every time I'd mention it, it was still, no. And, finally, out of the blue one day in 2009, he came to his senses. I got an email. It said, I'm ready to do that book. You still want to do it with me? And I gassed up my car that weekend, and the rest is kind of history.
We're talking to Adam Schupak from Golf Week magazine, and, of course, the former Colgate University Raider. We do have something in common. I hate to throw this at you out of the blue, but I worked for the AAA arm of the Chicago Cubs. You worked for the Williamsport Cubs. I worked for the Iowa Cubs. That's about as far as anything in common goes between you and I with looking at this bio of yours. But I'll let the guys. I'll let the guys that can ask serious questions throw it at you now.
Well, Adam, one of the things that I've always found interesting about Dean Beman is, generally you think of guys that become commissioner of a sport as being, if they played the sport, probably in the twilight of their lives. He really left a competitive playing career when he was playing very well to become commissioner of the PGA Tour.
You're right. I mean, he was, first of all, a decorated amateur champion, won the U.S. Amateur twice, and I just want to mention that he won the 1959 British Amateur when it was played at Royal St. George's, site of this week's British Open. He won there at age 21, the youngest American to win that tournament. And, he actually waited a little while to turn pro, not until he was 29, which is unusual these days. First he was started a successful insurance practice, and he just realized, it was kind of now or never at age 29 if he wanted to see how he could do against the best players in the world. Turned pro in 1967, made it through Q School, and he won 5 times in 4 years, twice, as you guys may know, at what was then the Quad Cities, now the John Deere. Won the very first year when the purse was, I believe, all of $25,000, and always has been a big fan of the tournament. Almost won the U.S. Open in 1969, and so he made this decision in 1973 to. He was 34 at the time. As I tell people, he was 26 on the money list and had a victory that season. So he would have been, in today's standard, in the FedEx Cup playing for that $10 million pot of gold at the the end of the rainbow that they play for now, and he just decided, even if he won a bunch of majors, he showed me he kept everything, which was great. And he showed me the diary that he kept, and he had down his goals for the next few years, and he had big goals to win, 3, 4, 5 major titles. And he said even if he accomplished that, he wasn't going to be remembered as one of the greats of the game. So maybe he could do more as commissioner. And, most of the players will salute him for the record prosperity. He wasn't really a commissioner that was loved, but eventually grudging respect for the things that he did to grow golf.
Well, Adam, you mentioned the 2 Quad Cities titles that he won. That was on the Iowa side of the river, and if we looked outside of our window, maybe got on our tiptoes, we could see Wakanda Club, which is where Dean won one of his U.S. amateur titles.
Yeah, that's right. 63.
So he could almost. In Iowa, we always joke we claim everybody. If you just stop
if you fly over, we claim you.
We'll claim you. So we're going to start claiming Mr. Beeman as kind of a. Well, he'd at least be in the Iowa Golf Hall of Fame for 3 big wins like that, wouldn't you think?
Well, that too. Plus, what he had a special fondness, I think, because of his victories for the John Deere. And there were a couple occasions. There was that time when Ed McMahon came aboard, and the tournament was, I think there was a press conference scheduled to announce that the tournament was going to be canceled, and Dean Beeman allowed them to have a slightly smaller purse than in previous years. And then there came a time a little later on, I think this was mid-'80s, where, again, the purse of the tournament was far below standards, and he said, look, you guys got to bring this up, and I know the community came together and raised some money to save this, this civic event that means a lot to your community, but they fell a little shy, and he got the PGA Tour's board to chip in that extra money to get, I believe, the purse up to $200,000, and then the following year, Hardee's came on board, and things settled down. So he always had a special fondness for the tournament. I know he came back last year for the 40th anniversary, and he wanted a full report. He's expecting a full report from me on my experience last week.
Well, he had to have, it had to be really interesting, just amazing foresight he had to leave this, great playing career, maybe playing for, like I said, for purses that he knew weren't there yet. But I think I saw somewhere he took the tour from $500,000 to $700,000 up to $500, $800 million in assets by his growth. I mean, that had to be incredible to learn, some of the ways that he did that. Can you share a few of those and on what he did to help grow it that fast?
Sure. I mean, as Jim Colbert likes to say, if the tour was a stock, it was Microsoft or Google. I mean, the riches that the players compete for today are kind of the most obvious measure, but hardly the most telling. I mean, when you think about it, at the start, when he took over in 1974, bowling got bigger ratings. Tennis was the more popular sport. And one thing I always point out is golf was really the most expensive sport to broadcast. And when I was growing up, you'd see 4 or 5 holes on Saturday. You'd get, the last maybe 6 on Sunday. But, golf it's just such a large field compared to the fixed space of a basketball arena. They couldn't show that much of it. And he took golf from being the most expensive to broadcast to the most profitable for the networks, basically by making golf the sport of corporate America and getting corporate America to pay the freight. So the brand exposure that they get outside of commercial time with saying John Deere Classic on the front page of the newspaper, I mean, you couldn't buy that as an advertiser back in the day. All those little things put together made the sponsor want to have their name on tournaments, made it so that the networks could show more coverage. It's the reason why we now have Thursday, Friday coverage. It's why there's the Golf Channel, and we get to see all 18 holes of the majors and most tournaments now. Is he just came up with a model that, even in these tough times, most of the tournaments have survived very well. Any sponsor that was struggling and went away has basically been replaced. And, he also was able to diversify the revenue streams of the tour, which really just relied on television with things like this TPC network, where, when he took over as commissioner, he went to his first tournament out in Phoenix in '74. And as you know, Dean Beeman, he's not a tall guy. He's about 5'7", and he couldn't see anything. He's, the crowds there were packed 10 deep, and back then everybody was using periscope, those paper periscopes, and he's standing on his tippy toes, and he realized he's never going to be able to grow this into more of a spectator sport for the casual golf fan if he didn't do something about it. Now we've got this these great venues with stadium-style viewing, and that just worked out so great. I mean, think about how many people were able to watch with a perfect view of the final hole when Steve Stricker hit one of the most clutch shots I've seen in a long time from that fairway bunker, 1 foot in the bunker, 1 foot out, knocking it on the green, and then holding the putt. I mean, it was. I think I wrote it was the best finish of the year all in golf this season. I mean, Charles Schwartzel was pretty great at the Masters, but it was cue the electricity. It was a fantastic finish.
Adam, tell people out there across the state of Iowa how they can get this great book, Dean Beman, Golf's Driving Force, before we let you go.
Okay, well, I definitely want people to stop by golfsdrivingforce.com, kind of your one-stop shop. We've got links to both Amazon.com, golfsmart.com. There's a Kindle version, and we recently added the Nook. We're working on getting it onto the iPad as well. And, I think it's a book that people really like. It starts off with a real bang with Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, and really a Hall of Fame roll call of players from that era who actually tried to oust Dean as commissioner. And this was Gary Player and Tom Watson and Johnny Miller, who all signed a letter to the to the chairman of the board, saying, they just were not buying into Dean's grand vision for the tour. And I don't want to spoil the story, but Dean Beman outsmarts these guys, outwits them, and survives, and the tour has flourished from there.
Well, Adam, we've certainly have enjoyed this conversation. We're going to try to catch up with you from time to time so you can bring some of your award-winning insight to On the Tee. Have a great week, and again, thank you very much. I'm sure you'll be one of those guys up early like we will, watching the Open the next 4 days.
Oh yeah, I want to see how Steve Stricker does. I think this is his year. I talked to his coach and father-in-law, Dennis Tiziani, who said he's really changed his ball flight off the tee, and we saw that he was hitting some much longer than I remember him this past weekend off the tee, and I think he's ready.
Adam Schupak, thank you very much, and appreciate you sharing with us tonight on the tee.
Okay, thanks for having me.
I like that. We didn't talk about Stricker. That's Adam Schupak from Golf Week, and of course the book is Dean Beman, Golf's Driving Force. When we come back, we're going to talk to a driving force behind Iowa golf. Your buddy J.D. Turner's going to talk a little Open with us.
And nobody loves the Open Championship more than Mr. Turner.
We'll be back on the tee on the Iowa Sports Connection Radio Network.